Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Preoccupations called New Material. So at least for me, it's been difficult to tell exactly where Preoccupations have been going with a lot of their sound. The transitions from the crushing, grinding riffs of Viet Cong to their self-titled record under this name came with the sonic shift towards more synth-infused, drone-like post-punk that was brighter and didn't quite feel as implacable as their debut, or as wiry or as tight as most of what the group was doing with their previous band, Women. And yeah, it wasn't a bad shift at all, but it led to tonal choices that didn't always seem to clearly match their compositions. It was a potent listen for sure, and one I still kind of go back to, but it's misshapen around the edges, and it's definitely a transitional project. But it looked like Preoccupations was just gonna keep on shifting, with the songwriting turning more introspective, and the tones reportedly sounding even brighter and more melodic. And I'll admit that I wasn't at all sure how this was gonna turn out. Part of losing that impact was why their last self-titled album hadn't quite resonated as well for me. And while there had been some influences reminiscent of The Cure or Echo and the Bunnymen, I didn't exactly see Preoccupations making any strides towards pop, even if they were going more melodic. But hey, if this is a record looking to hit rock bottom with even better tunes than ever before, I'd sure give it a listen. So what did I find on New Material? Okay, here's the thing. I suspect what Preoccupations is doing with New Material might alienate some fans and holdovers from their earlier, more guitar and groove-driven post-punk, because this is decidedly a different slant upon some of that material really across the board. It's not nearly as ponderous or dark or heavy in the conventional sense, and you might think that given the writing style and thematic arc hasn't really changed all that much, you might think it would be, again, a downside, sort of like what happened with the last album. And yet I'm here to tell you that not only did Preoccupations make their most accessible record to date, it's also probably their best. The best sort of blissed out, peaceful, apocalyptic nihilism I've heard all year. Yeah, and it's a really great little listen. And describing why it clicked so well for me comes in a fundamental change in sound and approach. And I'll stress that it didn't come immediately for me. Most because there were definitely points where I was waiting for the bass lines to hit harder or show more prominence and development within the smoky clouds of guitar feedback and glossy swells of warping synthesizer, which the band had admitted at some points it's pitched and lowered to sound almost like guitars on tunes like Decompose, where the only guitar there is actually a sample. And that is something that I really admire about a lot of the production on this project, how despite the usage of samples in the guitars and the vocals, it blurs together to flood a swollen, cavernous mix, punctuated by the booming percussion that's also occasionally sampled, and Matt Flagel's very curt, nasal delivery. And despite percussion that might feel almost industrial on a song like Espionage, or accenting the desaturated goth rock of Doubt, it doesn't feel clipped or out of place along with the rest of the mix. And that's not saying that there aren't some jagged edges, like with the mutated progressive swells of the drums on Manipulation, or the clicking, increasingly fragmented mix on Antidote as it feels like everything's just falling away, or the thunderous, overwhelming swell of noise in the closing instrumental Compliance. But it fits the weathered, almost old-school post-punk production depth. I make comparisons with Preoccupations to Echo and the Bunnymen and The Cure before, but especially with the brighter tides of ragged synth on songs like Disarray, it's much more reminiscent of the more opulent edges of post-punk that would ride out of the weirdness towards new wave in the early to mid-80s, analogous to say Ultravox or Joy Division shifting into New Order, especially considering Flagel is embracing more conventional melodic singing with the grooves instead of his clinical snapping delivery alongside of that. And when you also consider that a lot of these compositions are easily Preoccupations' most tightly written and economical to date, a lot of the drone elements of their last album have been phased out, it's hard not to feel like steps towards glossy or maybe even synth pop. It's surprisingly good for them. These songs might actually be kind of catchy. But here's where things get interesting. When you realize that there's more of an embrace of major chords and brighter synths in the composition, that naturally drives a shift in how one will take in the lyrics, which in the tradition of Preoccupations are clinical, fussy in an oddly technical way, and absolutely focused on a very downbeat, almost oppressive brand of nihilism that if anything is coiling further inwards than ever before. A lot of this sort of subject matter hasn't really changed all that much from their Viet Cong days, just with a different sound to contextualize it. And now, instead of playing the exasperated accountant of everybody's impending doom, there's a sense of bone-deep, tired resignation that is sunk in, and throughout, you're seeing the most human and relatable side that the group has ever really brought to the table. Take manipulation. It's not the first time that Preoccupations has written about somebody being manhandled by another within that system, be it by the larger system or otherwise, but the self-awareness of that person being manipulated, he can now clearly eye that person and ask to be seen as more in the end, not just with the resentment that he can't quite shake for his manipulator. Or take espionage, which uses a lot of harsh language to match some very harsh production as he's being brought down to the level of everybody else, and engaging with the sort of human emotions and social interactions to which the band has always somewhat kept at arm's length in their songs. And yet, these releasing moments lead to some genuinely startling moments that I really liked. I love how Decompose is so frank in how the surging course of time we'll just break down and we are cursed in the ways that we tend to be. The difference here is that they find some vestige of inner peace in accepting that, with the faint hopes that what we will leave behind will find some resonance for whoever come after. I'm reminded a lot of the best moments on Sun Coming Down by Ought that came back a couple years ago, which in the face of corrupt but fragile systems of human behavior, most of which they only stand on because on some level we're propping them up, we can find some release in the subtlest of transgressions like on Disarray, or just standing firm as it all collapses around us like on Solace. Hell, the album even ends similar to Sun Coming Down, with Doubt and Compliance showing some vestige of acceptance within that system. Sometimes that's being hardwired within our own DNA, but more with an acknowledgement of our own human fallibility. Even if the worst among us will send current down barbed wires, which is fantastic symbolism, and we are certainly big enough to impact change on our larger world, it is our lot to face a slow decay, and reaching an understanding of that allows some vestige of inner peace and serenity, coming to grips with who we are and where we're ultimately going. So yeah, it's nihilistic for sure, but it's meditative in the same way that great atmospheric black metal can be. And once I managed to clue into that mindset, I really came to like this album a lot. The tonal shifts adds a great new dimension and sense of humanity to this band that adds texture to the writing and really enhances it in the percussion. And when you pair with some of their tightest ever compositions, and in fact this is at 8 songs, this record's efficiency cannot be overstated. New Material is a great step forward for Preoccupations. For me, it's an 8 out of 10, definitely a recommendation, especially if you like vintage post-punk and might have felt let down by that last Ought album as I was, because this will definitely be up your alley. Fine work, gentlemen, and everybody else, yeah, make some time, check this out. It's really great. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Not a lot to say about this one, but hey, when it's really this great and it comes together this well, I gotta call it out. You wanna buy it, and you should, links below. And I got the poll up there. I'm curious where the Preoccupations fans will fall on this, because it is more accessible. It's not quite as heavy conventionally with that bass. So I can see some people being down on it, but hey, that's what the poll is for. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process or potentially help support this channel, link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. More details right there, and if you want to actually see what's going up on my schedule, it's on my Instagram, link below. But until next time, keep in mind my Patreon will be changing in the next couple of weeks or so. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.